G'day and welcome to another Space Engineers survival tutorial. This time we're going to talk about planetary bases. Base building is a very personal affair, and I'm a big fan of constructing massive, functional and hopefully visually attractive bases, even though there are other ways to go about surviving in Space Engineers. It could be because I'm a bit of a homebody, or any of 1,000 other reasons. The important point is that in Space Engineers you don't need a fixed base or home. You could very well decide that you want to build a mobile industrial complex into an enormous ship that is capable of doing its own mining, refining, manufacturing and anything else you could imagine or want to do. And I do things like that in some of my playthroughs. But if you're starting out, it can be quite a bit simpler to just have something stuck in the ground or stuck in an asteroid. So that's what we're going to do. Normally in a survival scenario, I'd be tearing down the lander to build my base because I'd be building it much earlier. However, since we've managed to collect a lot of resources and build a number of things, we can probably get this mostly built without tearing any of it apart. You could spend some time scouting out an area that you wanted to build in, either if you want to build on the side of a cliff, if you want to build down underground, however you want to do it. For this build, we're going to choose right where we are. It's relatively flat, we know there's resources nearby, so all in all it's a decent spot to start. We also conveniently start with a platform already built, and we're going to use that as part of the base. The first thing we're going to do is strip off all of those ramps, because we want to have an even smoother way to drive into our garage that's going to be a big part of our base. Once we've ground down the ramp pieces, we're going to extend out from the platform dead flat until it meets with the terrain. This will make it really easy to drive in. Probably be about 10 or 11 blocks out, and we want to make this about 6 blocks wide. That will comfortably fit our current rover and also allow us to expand it a little bit down the line. Once that extension's built, move the rover onto it because it's going to get in the way later, and we may as well park it where it's going to be stored, as it'll give us a guide for how big we need to build around it. Just in front of the rover, we're going to remove a row of those blocks. We're going to replace them with airtight hangar doors. A single row of these can only close an opening that is 2 blocks high. So we're going to have a row along the floor, and we'll also have a row along the ceiling. This will end up giving us a 6x4 block opening. That's more than adequate for most of the rovers that you're likely to build. And if you need something bigger, park your small one here and build a new garage. It can sometimes be a little awkward placing these, as they are 3 blocks by 1 block by 1 block. Make sure you rotate it so that it looks like the long edge is going the correct way, and also don't delete the whole row of blocks first. Even though this normally will allow you to reconnect the base, depending on the settings you used in the setup of your world, it may or may not work. So it's good to have a habit of always leaving 2 components of your base connected as you remove other parts. Once we've got the ground layer of the door in place, we're going to need to build some walls on each end so that we can start building the top layer as well. Build these 3 blocks wide and go 4 blocks above the floor. I like to build them 3 blocks wide so that we can hide just a little bit of the hangar doors, particularly the ceiling ones, as I like to have them resting in an alcove sort of thing, rather than being exposed. Once you have your 2 walls at either end, you can then raise it an extra block high and build the connecting bridge out of the hangar doors themselves. We can then build a row of blocks in front of the airtight hangar doors, and I like to just put a little bit of style onto these, and I put a corner piece or some other embellishment around most of my large hangar doors. Sometimes I even inset part of the hangar doors into those wall pieces. It's unnecessary, but sometimes the look works. At least I think it does. Try out a few designs for yourself and see what you think works for you. Now that we've got a clear idea of how big our hangar door is going to be, we can expand the floor space of the garage just a little bit to each side to get us ready for placing the rest of the base. Wheel out our large cargo container, refinery, assembler, speed module, and yield modules. And we should probably make some room for some reactors as well, so we'll add a small reactor onto the hotbar too. When I start out a build on my base, I like to place the largest items first. That's the large cargo containers and the refineries. Once they're down, I have a bit of a better idea of where things can fit so that I can make tight little alcoves or nice long open corridors, depending on what I'm aiming for with the design. Let's place 2 large cargo containers at the rear of our hangar area. If my design allows it, I like to leave one of the ports of a large container always accessible. It's convenient for dumping items off your personal inventory whenever you land back at base. Down one side of the hangar, we'll extend the floor out a bit, and this is going to be the base of where our refineries are going to be placed. I like the look of having some of the refinery exposed on the outside if the base is meant to be an industrial base. All of the pipes and other bits and pieces that they have on the detailed models, I like showing them off. And then on the inside, you'll get to show off all of the intricate little bits of the upgrade modules that you're going to place on the other side. So we'll place down 2 of these. You can see in the ghost view that on the back of the refinery there are 8 yellow connection points. These are the connection points for upgrade modules. They're identical on the refinery and on the assembler, and they take the same upgrade modules. Don't discount the effect of upgrade modules. They make inventory management so much easier because you only need a few refineries and a few assemblers, rather than needing a whole tree of them. Looking at the assembler model, we can see that its upgrade points are a little more differently spread out. On 2 sides you have double points, and then on the other sides you have a single point. So if we place 2 of these together, we can overlap an upgrade module onto the 2 of them, covering each of those single points. You can also see that the connection points for the conveyors will allow us to potentially add other items onto them once we've got them in place. With a setup like that, assemblers actually take up more space than you'd expect. So what we're going to do is we're going to put down a conveyor between the large cargo container and where we'll start putting down the assemblers. We will connect 2 of them end to end, making sure those upgrade module points are in the center so that we can overlap 2 like we talked about. Now they're in place, let's cover them in upgrade modules. I haven't added any power efficiency modules to this build because we've already established that we've got lots of uranium, so why don't we just get stuff faster? We have enough, let's use it. If you're in a situation where power is a lot tighter, some of those power efficiency modules might be your lifesaver. On the underside of these 2 assemblers, we're going to use their conveyor ports and we're going to connect 2 small reactors to them. What we want is one of the connection points of the small reactors to be facing outwards so that we can access them directly and add uranium in if there's no power in the base for the conveyors to push the uranium to the reactors. Only a couple more things to add, so let's start with the oxygen setup. Let's get an oxygen generator and an oxygen tank. The tank isn't strictly necessary, but can be handy. We'll use one of the connection points on the bottom of the refineries, and we'll whack the oxygen generator on there with the tank stuck nice and neatly on top. With that down, let's place the last piece of the puzzle, a medical bay. For this build, we're going to place it down the far end of the large cargo containers. We want to be able to connect it up to the conveyor system so that when you go to the medical bay to get your power back, you also get oxygen and hydrogen if there's ice in the generator. Extend out the floor a little bit. Place down your med bay and connect it up via the conveyor system. Now, we just need to use the conveyors to connect the rest of the setup together. Sometimes I want to have these conveyors all visible so it all looks like a massive refinery setup, and other times I want to try and hide them as neatly as possible. For now, I'm just going to keep it simple and just connect them up. With the last piece being a nice little smokestack with a connector on top for our mining ship to land on. It looks like I got a little bit ahead of myself there. I forgot to put the enhancement modules on the back of the refinery. You don't need to place these all neatly in rows. You can jumble them up and try and make it a bit more interesting, which is what I'm going to do. I'm not aware of any advantage or disadvantage to having them cross over between the two refineries, so I just go with whatever you think is going to look best. And now, we have a wireframe base. It's time to get to some welding. At this point, you've seen how to build the functional part of the base. I didn't want to go through the whole process of designing the walls and the roof. I'll leave that for maybe another tutorial, or really, that should be up to you. Experiment, find what you like, find a design you like. If you look on the workshop and see a ship that you think looks really cool, download it. Paste it in a creative world, have a look at it, try and take some inspiration from it. That's my favourite way of going about designing stuff, because you get to see some really cool things as well. There are two things missing from the base at the moment. The first is that it needs uranium so that the doors can move, and second, we need some buttons we can push to make those doors move. Let's take some uranium from the lander, pop it into the base, and then we'll put down some button panels on either side of the large hangar door. Once these are built, we can set them up to connect to the hangar doors. We first need to make a group of all of the airtight hangar doors, and then we can move over to the button we want to use to press to open it. Select it with K, and in that menu we can then set up for open close to be the button action. You can set up any buttons this way, and there are a lot of different settings you can do for different blocks within the game. Just experiment and see what you can come up with. Let's test our button and make sure that everything works. Well, it looks like it's all working properly, so the only thing left to do is to build walls, roof, put some lighting in, and you'll be good to go. Off camera, I completed walls, a roof, and everything else we needed for this base. We'll have a look at that design quickly, but if you want to have a closer look, go onto the workshop and download it. The link will be in the description, and I'll probably even put it in the first comment of this video as well. So that's about it. That's how you build a base. This was a bigger video than usual because base building is an enormous topic. There's still heaps of other things that I need to talk about. I haven't discussed lighting, and that will probably come up in a later tutorial. The next tutorial in this series is going to be looking at large ship building, particularly in a survival setting, how you might be able to go about designing a ship that doesn't look like a giant brick. See you then!